All right, Minnesota Timberwolves versus Oklahoma City Thunder prediction. I predict the Minnesota Timberwolves win in 6 or 7 games. The reason why is because Minnesota has more men on their team. It might sound funny, but you'll understand when I explain. They got more men on their team, and they got more men in more effective roles, right? So, when Rudy Gobert is a man, he's a grown man. Julius Randle, grown man. Naz Reid, grown man. Anthony Edwards, young, but a grown man. Mike Conley, grown man, right? And when you got grown men on the court as opposed to young players, there's some things you got with that, right? Now, I'm not talking about old men. I'm talking about grown men, right? So they got more physicality. They're going to be stronger. I believe they're bigger, right? They're going to play bigger, or they're going to have the ability to play bigger. And they're going to have the ability to get a certain kind of point that, I mean, literally score a certain kind of point that Oklahoma City is not capable of scoring. And when I say that, what I mean is I expect Minnesota to get easier shots closer to the rim, more second chance shots. So what does that mean as far as Oklahoma City goes, right? Oklahoma City is going to be hot from 3 in at least 1 or 2 games. And I believe they're going to win those games. But what about the rest? That's what I worry about for Oklahoma City. So, Oklahoma City got some men on their team, quote unquote men on their team, right? It's just that, when you look at Chet Holmgren, right? He's thin. He's not who I'm talking about, though. When I say men, I'm talking about Isaiah Hartenstein, Alex Caruso, Lou Dort, right? Those dudes are men, right? It's just that, what is their role? Their role is a role player. So then the only way they could really affect the game is how they play as men on defense. I don't expect them to give much on offense or on the boards. And hey, I'm old school. Rebounds win rings. No rebounds, no rings. Just like Pat Riley said back in the day. Right? That's a hard and fast rule to me. But I don't see how Oklahoma City's men could combat Minnesota's men. Right? Because, man, Rudy Gobert, he got a role. That dude is capable of locking up the middle. Right? All the shit I took and everything I said about Nikola Jokic, Rudy Gobert is the opposite. Very little offense, but his value is on defense and locking up that middle. And he is more than capable of doing that. Right? So you got Rudy Gobert. You got Julius Randle, who is going to beat Oklahoma City up. Right? So look. And this is the other thing, man. You got Julius Randle probably matched up against Chet Holmgren. And it's going to be one of them cases where it's like, it don't matter how big you are. Right? I remember when, and this is not the same. But it's something similar. I remember when Akeem Olajuwon, who was 6'10", right, played against David Robinson, who I think was 7'1" or 7'2", and could jump to the moon. And just the way the matchup was, Akeem Olajuwon was like a man, and David Robinson was like an athletic kid, right? And Akeem Olajuwon busted David Robinson's ass. You know how they say in boxing, matchups make fights, right? Yo, man, it was just a really bad matchup for David Robinson. And for 6 or however long the series went, Akeem Olajuwon busted David Robinson's ass, and David Robinson is one of the great centers ever. And Akeem Olajuwon busted his ass. And that's what I think might happen in this series between Julius Randle and Chet Holmgren. I think that might be what happens. I think Julius Randle might just straight bust Chet Holmgren's ass. Just like as a man, right? Versus a male who is young and still growing into his body. I think you just might see Julius Randle just straight whoop his ass, man. I think Anthony Edwards is going to look across the court and have a lack of respect for those guys, right? Like, Anthony Edwards playing against Denver, in my opinion, is different than Anthony Edwards playing against a bunch of his peers that are his age. And I think you might see some of that, right? I think you might see Anthony Edwards just say, look, man, is there a question of if whether I'm better than Luka Doncic or if I'm better than Nikola Jokic, right? Okay, yeah, I respect that question. But you young cats who are my peer, no. And I think that he may straight go off on Oklahoma City, right? So you take a dude like Shea, right? Shea is unique. That dude is unique, and I'm gonna tell you why. I watched him in every game this past series, and he is he's a little bit volumey, right? When I say volumey, what I mean is that, yeah, dude puts up numbers, but it's not like it's super impactful. I don't know how to put it, man, but some kind of way, it's not like his points hurt. You know, it's not like they stick. Look, man, there was a point, right, where I heard Jerry West talking about Kobe Bryant, and what he said was, man, you know, I knew he was a star when I saw him in high school and I was scouting him. I knew he was a star, but when he got to the NBA, he's one of those guys that if he scores, if he makes 2 baskets, it's the 2 baskets you remember. All night, it's the 2 baskets you remember. Right? If he makes 8, it's the 8 baskets you remember. You know, he was that kind of dude. And I never forgot Jerry West saying that about Kobe Bryant, because I thought it was a super unique observation to make. Right? And there's something about Shea that his 2 points count just like anybody else's 2 points. But some kind of way, it's like, I don't know, man. It's like volume shooting points. Not that he's a volume shooter, right? But I always say, if you're, y'all don't jump my shit, because I'm about to use Nikola Jokic, right? But if Nikola Jokic plays 40 minutes and he gets 12 rebounds, it's like, I mean, a handful of them rebounds are already built into the number. You know what I mean? In other words, when he gets his rebounds, it's not like impactful rebounds. It's like rebounds that you kind of ought to get if you play 40 minutes. Like, look, man, if my fat ass plays 40 minutes in a basketball game, I'm going to have 2 or 3 assists. You know what I mean? I'm going to get up. I'll put it like this. If my fat ass plays in a basketball game, I'm going to get up a certain number of shots. Right? Do I make them? I don't know. Probably not. But you hear what my point is. My point is that it's implicit that if you play 40 minutes, you're going to have a certain number of shots. You're going to have a certain number of rebounds. You're going to have a certain number of assists. And, like, I'll take you another example. LeBron James and Luka Doncic. They like to catch rebounds flat-footed. Well, if they're catching rebounds flat-footed, that means my fat ass could have caught the rebound flat-footed. You see what I'm saying? So that natured rebound is not the same as a rebound that you see Dennis Rodman going and getting. Right? Tapping 3-4 times to himself in order to get the team another possession. Yo, man, those rebounds aren't built equally. You know, those, same thing when it comes to points. Those type of points aren't built equally. Right? Those type of assists aren't built equally. You know? Give you an example. There is such thing as a hockey assist in basketball. And like the old Houston Rockets, they were an inside-out team. It was, they throw the ball into Akeem Olajuwon, he would bring a double, and he would kick it back out to Kenny Smith, Vernon Maxwell, Robert Ory, Sam Cassell, Clyde Drexler in the second year, right? He'd kick it out to those guys and they'd whip it around. Those were all his assists. He generated those open shots. But that was the plan, right? And there's something about Shea that his points are 2 points, but it's not impactful. You know, it's like his points are flat-footed rebounds as opposed to a Dennis Rodman rebound, right? Where he got something he wasn't supposed to get. You know, his points don't have that kind of impact. I noticed that in the series against Denver. You know, Oklahoma City beat Denver because Oklahoma City was younger and had more wind than Denver. That's what it felt like why they beat Denver, right? Not necessarily because Shea just kicked ass and played so well. That's not the vibe I got after watching that series. I got the vibe that Oklahoma City just kept coming in waves and Denver couldn't hang. Denver could not hang, you know? And that's what they are not going to be able to do to Minnesota, in my opinion. They could come at waves with Minnesota as much as they want. Julius Randle, for every minute he's on that court, he's going to be physical. He's going to be a fighter. He's going to be that mother effer you hate playing against. That's who he is. Rudy Gobert is a grown effing man. And the question is, one, how does Oklahoma City approach Minnesota? And two, does Minnesota change their game to try to combat what Oklahoma City is doing? Because I'm a staunch believer that you don't just change your game because the other team decides to play a certain way. You don't do that. You stick to your guns up to a certain point. And then past that point, you might make a couple of small adjustments. But you stick to your guns, you know who you are, and you abide by that. And that's who you ride with. You ride with your philosophy, your game plan, your players. That got you there. That's what you do. And if the other team beats that, hey, you got beat. Right? You know what you got to do next year to get over that hurdle. You know? But yeah, I'm curious to see. It's going to be super interesting matchup. They aren't the most high profile teams, but it might be the best matchup in the West. You know, and it's kind of indicative of where the West is going. Right? This almost feels like a passing of the torch. But yeah, man, I predict Minnesota wins in 6 or 7 games. I think Anthony Edwards is going to look and see his peers. I'm not talking about guys who are many years older than him. I think he's going to look and see his peers and say, you guys don't have shit on me. Right? Yeah. The big dog in the room, right? You're in a room with LeBron. You're in a room with Steph Curry. Yeah. The big dogs, yeah, I get it. Right? There is a certain amount of maturity there. Right? The old dog kind of just gets respect because he's an old dog. You know what I mean? Like, Anthony Edwards is not far from having to call LeBron Mr. James. In age, I mean. You know what I mean? So there is some of that. But with these young cats, it's like, no, I'm allowed to go disrespect every single one of you. And here it comes. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw that from Anthony Edwards. You know? But the big thing that's going to happen, in my opinion, is Minnesota's going to put a bunch of men on the floor. Right? And just because they're grown men don't mean that they're not as fast, not as quick. It sure does mean, though, that they're probably stronger and more physical. Right? Better rebounders. And I think that's what Minnesota is going to do to Oklahoma City. That's why I think they win the series. Decent shot, I'm wrong, you know. But hey, man, that's what I predict. That's what I see. So anyway, this is Pure Uncut Lakers. Please like and subscribe. Hey, man, I speak on anything. You know, I look forward to the series, though. All right, y'all, be cool.